Morning, guys. Dr. Ken Nordberg here again with a fireside hunting seminar. Today we're going to get into the next subject of hunting and scouting during the hunting season, beginning on day 3. We've done this before, but now we're continuing this nitty-gritty evaluation of each little part that we do, because I want you to be able to do it and be successful at it. So, kind of fun day. Now, up to this point, we've been talking about scouting before hunting season begins, and the first 2 or 3 days of a hunting season, hunting during that period. Now we're going to get into the part where beginning day 3 of a hunting season. I know a lot of you guys don't hunt after opening weekend, but maybe you should be thinking about it. But it's kind of fun in a way, but difficult. The reason is, by day 3, every mature buck, and probably every mature doe as well, or most of them, does with young that are older than yearlings, know my sons and I and my other hunting partners are hunting them. Here we are, we're back again. Now the bucks that we particularly want to hunt, that we spend all our time and efforts to hunt, are older bucks. And they've been avoiding us already. They've been surviving our hunting for years. 3, 4 years, 5 even. And proving they're really good at it, at avoiding us. And the strange thing about buck hunting is that, what they're doing, we don't know a lot. You don't see it, you don't hear it. It rarely happens in the woods that a buck is doing this. But it's there, and they do it so well, we start thinking, there aren't any bucks in this area, no big bucks. We need to do something about it. But they're there, and they're doing that, and they're avoiding you. And if you're a stand hunter, if you and your buddies in this area that you hunt are all standers, those bucks aren't abandoning their ranges during the hunting season. They're all staying in their ranges because they know you're not an aggressive hunter. You don't chase them around. You don't stalk them. You don't trail them. Nothing like that. You don't make drives. You're not a still hunter, wanders randomly all through this square mile where you're hunting. None of those things. We're not forcing deer to abandon their ranges by aggressive hunting. We just sit in trees. and whereas they know we're still potentially dangerous, they know that as long as they keep a safe distance away from wherever you are, stand hunting, ground level, or up in a tree, they're safe. Now, one of the things we do, one of the most important things we do as stand hunters, you already know that those crazy Nordbergs, they're changing stand sites every half day. And say that seems like, boy, that's unnecessary, but think about that, What we do is we always sit very near very fresh tracks or droppings or ground scrapes and other deer signs, or like a doe in heat that has bloody urine, places like that. The does that are in heat right now. But we always do our best to sit very close to wherever big bucks are active right now. Now, in a square mile, they aren't active all over the whole square mile. You can't just go out there anywhere and expect to see the buck. You got to be where they are now. And that now place is only about 10% of their total home or breeding range. Just little areas, small areas, narrow areas. It might be half mile long, like a trail, but still, the area that they're going to be in that particular day is going to be small. And if you aren't there, you're not in the ballpark. Well, the problem with being in the ballpark, the problem with always being very close to where older bucks are active right now, based on their fresh signs, fresh tracks or droppings made within the previous minutes or hours, just minutes or hours ahead of time, you're always close. And when you're always close, you're always in jeopardy double jeopardy actually of being discovered by that big buck without you even knowing it. What is that? They're real talented at this, and they've proven it already because they're big bucks. You know, they've survived your hunting for years. And in the process, they've learned all they need to know about you as far as your odors. You know, you smell different than any other hunter in the woods. And the sounds you make, and even the way you walk. You know, they see you walking, oh, it's that guy. Well, anyway, they know all about you. But the other thing is, those bucks know you're going to be close to them wherever they are. Every day they know, oh, you know, he's going to be around here somewhere, and they're going to be constantly searching for you. For your sense, airborne sense, your trail sense. Oh, trail sense are a great way to tell them, oh, he's in this area today. He's around here somewhere. And they'll be looking for you. And those big bucks won't feel safe every day until they know where you are. Because, you know, like I said, they know you're here because you keep popping up wherever they are. They can be here one day and a mile over there the next day with a different doe and heat. And doggone it, there he is. There's that hunter again. How does they do that? So it's frustrating for them, but it's not frustrating enough to make them abandon the area or become nocturnal and move at night only. They won't do that because you're not an aggressive hunter. So that's one of the real advantages of being a stand hunter. But still, you're dealing with that all the time. You're as skilled as you might be. They are more skilled at discovering and identifying and avoiding hunters. They're more skilled at that than you are of identifying and being close to them wherever they are. And so, but now and then, because they have to look for you every day, every once in a while, one gets close. You know, they're out there walking around, and you see it. You know, when you see a big buck coming toward you finally, and he's looking around. You know, he's sniffing, and he's looking for you. Exactly, that's what he's doing. And then you get him because he doesn't know you're there yet. Well, one of the hunting methods my boys and I use every now and then when we have a buck that's been really tough to get. I remember there's been several times when I have hunted one buck. I did that last year. I hunted one buck most of the time, but I didn't have enough guys in camp before we left, before the season was over, to use this hunting method that I call cover all bases. And what cover all bases is that when you've been hunting a buck, well, like one buck I hunted on ground level with my stool, well hidden, well concealed, and nearby cover, downwind, crosswind of them. I might be on a trail next to a feeding area that the buck used often to get to the feeding area, or I hunted on one edge of the feeding area that he fed in every day, and then or maybe the other side the next day with a change of wind direction. I hunted near trails, two trails. The thing used to get to his bedding area every day, and somehow or another, that buck, I never saw him for a whole week. And I'd get my sons and grandson and whatnot. Tomorrow I need your help. We're going to get this big buck. And so we get the map out and we discuss wind direction, all these things, best ways to get to all those stand sites that I just talked about. Cover every one of them. And we're going out there really early in the morning. We're going to be at those stand sites by 5:30 in the morning. Out there in the dark. It's settled in there. And you know what? One of the reasons that group hunting method, this kind of a group hunting method works so well is that when that big buck discovers one of us, any one of us, he tends to think, and he gets around you without you knowing it, or maybe you even see him and get a glimpse and he's gone. He thinks he's safe. Now I don't have to worry about it. And that he'll let down his alertness. He won't be as alert. And he's, oh, nothing to worry about. I can go anywhere else I want around here. And he runs into somebody else in the gang. And typically, it's one of my sons that he'll get my buck, you know. But it's a great way to get it. But that, because they tend to become lax after finding the hunter, then all of a sudden we see them. You know, you couldn't do it all week. But it proves that buck was being very successful at keeping track of me every day until we used that group hunting method. So, like I say, most time, you know, when you're hunting a big buck, you don't know this is going on because you don't see them. If you got snow on the ground, you go run into his tracks if you're paying attention. Geez, here he was just downwind of my stand here. You see where he stopped? He kind of moved around a little bit, you know. The tracks here and there, right on top of your tracks where you came in. And he was downwind. He got me this morning. He did. And that's happens so often during the first or second hour of a morning. He'll get you. And so, but you don't give up. Sometimes you can do that the whole darn hunting season and still not get a decent shot at that buck. That happens. But most years, sooner or later, you'll get a chance to take the buck. Because they just, you know, they might get by you 2-3 times while they're searching for you without knowing it, but they might show up the very first day, the third day of the hunting season that morning. Boy, you got the buck. Or the second day, or the third day, or maybe the 8th day, but that's the way buck hunting is. That's part of it. So, all of our scouting after the hunting season is really different from when we scout before the hunting season, because we know this is going to be happening. You know, we know it's going to happen. We know that on the third day, if we go out there to this one stand site, and we thought, oh man, this is going to be a terrific spot. It's got all the characteristics of a mature buck effective stand site. Well, I'm going to get a buck here for sure, and sometimes that happens. But if I stayed in that tree stand, went back there twice a day, or go there in the morning, don't come back till dark in the evening, all the rest of the hunting season, the odds are I'm completely wasting my hunting time. And that's terrible. But that's typical of buck hunting. It's the reason we want to, you know, once we learned, and we sure, you know, you learn it because you keep doing these things and this keeps happening, and then you make a change and gee, that made a big difference. We've learned that those darn big bucks find you quickly. Early in the morning, every year, you know, during feeding hours, that's when they're most active, and whether does are in heat or not. If it's with a doe, he's kind of following her around, and he's kind of stuck with having to be wherever she is, where if he was alone, he might be more careful about it. So they're a little more vulnerable for that reason when they're with a doe in heat. But at any rate, we know it's a waste of time. I mean, if we all did that every year, we'd just sit in one stand site from day 3 on, we wouldn't got near, not even close to the number of mature bucks we've taken since 1990. And as I've said before, that's 105 of them. We know this is what we have to do now. Listen, you know, out of 1,000 guys that hear me say this, I'll bet there's going to be 800 guys who say, that's crazy. That isn't the way it works. And argue endlessly one thing after another why moving to a new stand site every half day and getting there before dark in the morning is crazy. That just can't work. Don't believe that. I mean, until you've tried it yourself, you can't, you just don't know how effective doing something like that can be. So you have to try it, and then try it and find out for yourself, this is true. This is what Dr. Nordberg's saying here is really true. So anyway, so you can see why it becomes important to be able to scout during the hunting season. Boy, years ago, you know, when I first started my studies of whitetail hunting, we used to build one permanent tree stand a year for each of us, my kids and I and my dad and brother and that, and we'd use that for the whole season. and it was okay, because quite often a buck did come along when we were doing that, and we get one. The kids were taking really nice bucks during that season, but the only we believed then that sooner or later a buck's going to come. You're going to get it sitting here, and it happened, but that doesn't happen anymore because of what I just told you. Those older bucks that have survived previous hunting seasons know all about you and what to do to avoid you. So this is the reason why we finally, after years of trying different tactics, we got to the point where we say we got to move every half day. And that has been paying off for 30 years. Well, it's hard. One of the things about that, moving every half day, is where do you move? Well, like I said, one of the most important characteristics of any stand site we select is always close to tracks and droppings, or maybe a ground scrape, made during the previous minutes or hours. When we find that, we're close. Now, if we find it carefully, the buck isn't going to know it. If we're careless about this kind of thing, what we just found we're going to ruin right from the outset. It's easy to imagine why a lot of hunters, maybe most hunters, would think it's really crazy to be scouting during the hunting season. Because when most of us scout before hunting season, we always alarm deer around there, and we learned early too that some of those deer, especially the older bucks, when they became alarmed enough to raise their tails and snort and go bounding away, they didn't come back for a couple of weeks. And so if you went in there, like say a week before or day before, a lot of hunters go in the day before, which is not good. That's not good at all. It'll ruin your hunting. And so we knew I knew that kind of thing was going to happen when we were scouting. And I was really reluctant to even try it for years and years and years. And finally, beginning in 1990, when we moved to my new farm north study area, a deer and bear and wolf study area, a lot of wolves to study, we began learning almost from day one how to scout during the hunting season without alarming deer. Because the wolves were doing it all the time. You know, what we were seeing is, and I've talked about it a bit before, we'd see wolf packs. After November 8th every year, wolves from other areas would join the alpha male and female wolves that raise young in my study area. They'd join them, and boy, in those early years, it'd be 6 or 7 of the older wolves. And gee, you'd see them going by in the morning, early, and all strung out, single file along certain trails. And there were certain trails we learned where we often saw that string of wolves going by. And I started calling them wolf cruise trails. And I thought, well, when they're going by like that, and there's a deer standing over there, say 30, 50 yards away on one side, and I've watched them going by those deer many times. I saw it happen over and over again, and the deer just stood there like it was dumb, and the wolves just marched back by them without seeming like they didn't know the deer was there. And I expected, when they'd spot the deer and give chase, but so often it didn't happen. They just went by them. And then that year, I got caught up in a special hunt being used by the wolves. And in all the years I've been watching those wolves, and in all the years I've been learning everything I can about gray wolves, I never seen the kind of hunting that our wolves were using commonly. I never seen it. And I never found it described in literature of any kind, scientific or otherwise. It was like, this is a strange new thing for wolves. But I'm not so sure about that. It might be a common hunting method amongst gray wolves all over North America, for all I know. I don't know. I can't say I've seen it elsewhere any great distance away. But it certainly was common for the wolves in my study area, for them to do this. And I learned that when they marched by like that, not every time, but often when they marched by like that, what they did, you know, what they were doing is they'd go walking along at a brisk pace, not running, a moderate pace, with their heads pointed straight ahead, as if they had no idea there was any deer there. And they'd keep going, and the deer would stand there and watch them go by, and pretty soon they're out of sight and hearing, and then the deer would start feeding, you know, again, after they went by. And I thought, well, you know, something really weird about this, because that deer was upwind of the wolves, and they had to smell it, and how come they didn't chase that deer? And what further evidence of that was when, a lot of times when these packs would go by like that, single file, there'd be a couple pups, young, half-grown wolves following them. They're always at the tail end. And they'd be marching along that way, and gee, there could be fresh deer tracks back and forth across their cruise trail, and they paid no attention to that. And those little younger wolves would come along, and they'd be all excited. They'd poke their noses in those tracks, and they were wagging their tails, and they're all excited, and pretty soon they're being left behind, and they scramble to catch up again. So I knew darn well those wolves had smelled that trail scent, or airborne scent, emitted by that deer right over there. So, and then I discovered one year I was sitting out there in the woods on my stool, and I heard some rustling behind me. I turned around and there were 6 mature wolves behind me. And they were sniffing the ground and wagging their tails and going this way and that. And like they were looking for a bone that they left there maybe a month before, and there's got to be a bone around here. You know, and they never once looking at me, but they were downwind of me. So I knew they had to smell me. So I thought, well, there's something going on here. And they were gradually getting closer, and I started getting worried about it. I started thinking of moose femur bones that crunched by wolf teeth. Why would one of those to grab me and crunch my femur? You know, and they're coming, and you know, and finally I stood up that first time, and my rifle ready to fire, the safety off, and I didn't know quite what to do at that point. But one of the things I often did when I didn't want my cat to be bothering me when I was writing a book, I'd growl at her. I'd go, "Rrr," and she'd go away. I wouldn't see her for hours. Well, so just, it was maybe, I thought maybe it was a mistake, but I went, "Rrr," and you know, all those wolves immediately halted and looked at me with their yellow eyes. And that's a pretty impressive picture. All these big wolves, as big as yearling does, standing there looking at me with those yellow eyes. And then after just a few moments, they went back to wandering back and forth and wagging their tail and sniffing the ground. But they were moving away. And pretty soon they disappeared. Well, a few minutes after they disappeared, I heard all this brush crackling over the other direction. And here comes a doe racing. I mean, this doe wasn't bounding, it was just racing flat on as fast as it could go. And about 10 yards behind it was this big wolf. It turned out it was the buckskin-colored alpha wolf of the pack, the female, on his tail and chasing it as fast as it could. And I stood up to see what the heck's going on. And then all these wolves that had been around me came out of the brush over on my left and joined the chase, and they chased that doe. And about 5 minutes later, they came filing back, going back in the direction that that doe and wolf came from, with their tongues hanging out. They didn't catch that doe. And then that was kind of one of those aha moments in life and in research. It says, you know what? I probably screwed up their hunt. What had happened here is they used a drive and stand technique. They probably walked right past that deer, as I've seen them do many times, along that wolf cruise trail. It was up in the area that deer and single wolf came from. There's a cruise trail, and they probably walked right by it, and by not paying any attention to that deer, acting as if, and not looking toward it, not stopping, just kept going, they fooled that deer, which they had selected as a prey as they went by a sight or peripheral vision, they kept that deer from running away until they got a chance to get away from where it was and set up their hunt. And the way they set up the hunt is that all but one deer, the wolves, would circle downwind and get downwind of that doe or that deer, the selected deer. Easy to do. They could smell when they were downwind of it. And they'd wait there as a group. And the other deer, the single one, would sneak back from crosswind and get as close as possible. So you're stalking really careful. And invariably, a deer, especially an adult deer, will detect the approach of a wolf like that before it's close enough to be able to leap up and grab them. You know, they're pretty good at detecting even wolves coming toward them. And it would take off. Well, it was that wolf's job to chase it downwind as fast as it could go, so it couldn't make up its mind to do something else. Fast as it could go downwind toward that waiting group out downwind. And I suppose what usually happens then, they probably spread out and they hear them coming. You certainly hear them coming. And when that wolf runs into or that deer runs into their midst, they close in on and kill it really quick. That's probably a lot better way to take mature whitetails than simply giving chase every time they see one. And so our wolves did that a lot. And I'd find tracks of where they're doing it, and I saw them in the process of doing this several times over the years. So it wasn't just a one-time or chance kind of thing, or maybe I was making the wrong conclusions about what they were doing. No, they did this quite often, back when they had big packs in November. That was, like I say, an aha moment. All of a sudden I realized those wolves just show me how us humans can scout during the hunting season without alarming deer. We have to move along through the woods acting as if we're not hunting, not at all interested in any deer, looking like we're only interested in getting way over there somewhere, which we commonly are, but without stopping. Without turning our heads, without sniffing the air, sniffing tracks, measuring tracks, stopping to measure tracks, or stopping to say, I wonder if that would be a good place to sit on my stool or come back here, these fresh deer tracks. No, we learned that you can't do any of those things when scouting during the hunting season. We learned that if you walk straight to a stand site without stopping in the morning, keep your heads pointed straight so that any deer in the woods will see you in the dark or in the daylight. And boy, they can see you 400 yards away in little holes in the brush and trees, and oh, there goes a hunter. If you're moving steadily with your head pointed straight ahead, they aren't going to run away. If they're in your path ahead, if they hear you coming or see you coming, they'll move aside, maybe stand in cover where they can't easily be seen, and watch you pass. But if you stop every few steps and you're looking around, pausing like that, you're hunting. Whether you're a wolf or a man, that's dangerous hunting behavior. You know, and the sad thing is, every one of us has been taught sometime or another that when you're hunting deer on foot, you should stop, you know, sneak and stop every few feet and look around, listen. Because that makes you sound as if you're another deer feeding, and so they aren't going to pay any attention to you. And sometimes that works on fawns and yearlings. But what fawns and yearlings do is nothing like older deer do. They make so many mistakes because it takes them 2 years to get to be good enough to be non-vulnerable to that kind of sounds they hear in the woods. There's a lot of them that do are really curious. What's over there making that noise? They've got to know. You know, yearling bucks do that all the time, making them one of the most easily hunted deer in the woods every year. But not older deer. They don't do that. That's something they don't do. But anyway, so we learned that if we do that during the hunting season while we're looking for deer signs, we aren't going to alarm deer to the extent that they're going to abandon the range. Well, I know there's been times when I've had a deer, it's rare, I mean it doesn't happen hardly at all, that a deer will all of a sudden be right there snorting and bounding away while I was moving along this manner. And generally, sometimes, there were a couple times I decided to backtrack that deer and found that it had been chased by wolves a short time earlier. So now it was really kind of worried, he was acting differently than he would have if the deer has been calm to start with. So that can happen, and then you can't help that. You never know when something like that, but it's rare. Most of the time, almost always, I mean, you can go all deer season without alarming any deer enough to make them abandon their range, like you would if you're just sitting in a tree, while traveling to and from stand sites, if you just go straight there. Fred Bear, the famous bow hunter back in the 50s, was on TV all the time on American Sportsman. It was a real popular outdoor program every Sunday, never missed it. Well, I met him down in New Orleans, and he said the same thing. When he goes to stand site, he just goes straight there. And his feeling about it is that your odds of taking a deer while you're walking along are really lousy, but they're really good when you're at the stand site. So why waste your time by hunting along the way to a stand site, frightening deer enough to make them perhaps abandon their range, and certainly the area around your stand site. That's kind of crazy. Don't do that. So go straight there. But if they don't even have to see you doing that. If they hear you, step, 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 and then pause, it's kind of ominous. See, is that a wolf sneaking up on me? That's hunting behavior. It doesn't, I don't care what anybody says, stopping off while you're on foot in the woods is hunting behavior that startles whitetails. It scares them. They don't like that. Well, we had a doe that lived in the valley on the other side of a high hill we used to call Antler Mountain, because we kind of took a lot of bucks there over the years. Antler Mountain. And we had a cruise trail. I'll tell you about cruise trails in a minute, but we talked about that. But we had a cruise trail that went up over that hill and down into the valley on the opposite side. And the first year I hunted that area, and I got a dominant breeding buck on the final day of the hunting season. That doe was with that buck. And when I got the buck, they were only 20 yards away when I fired at it and dropped the buck. And while I was field resting that buck, that doe stood over there about 100 feet away and snort, 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 snort. Oh, it was really an upset doe. And when I started dragging the buck back toward camp, it even followed me for a while. Snort, snort, snort. And then finally, I turned around and it was standing just a little ways, and I said, that's what you get for they came close to me because I used a grunt call. And the doe come over to see what that buck looked like, probably. And that's why they got to be so close. But so I told the doe, I said, well, that's what you get for fooling around with other bucks. Now go find yourself another buck and leave me alone. And she just stood there, and she didn't follow me anymore. She didn't run away either. But every year after that, for about 6 years, if you follow that cruise trail we had that went over that Antler Mountain, when you hit the skylight in the dark, your silhouette black against the starlit sky behind here, and we'd be moving west at that point, and the eastern sky was starting to glow a little bit, because the sun was going to be coming up a little. She'd get you every time. See that movement up there, and snort, 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 snort. And so we finally had to change that section of our cruising trail to go around the southern end of that Antler Mountain through a swampy area. It was kind of a pain in the neck to avoid being identified by that darn doe. So that can happen. So just because it happens doesn't mean, it can happen to you. It doesn't mean this is not the thing to do. That one doe didn't change us one iota as far as the way we scouted during the hunting season. Not a bit. So that can happen. It's almost inevitable that those kind of things will happen. And we had similarly, I used to go along the edge of this beaver pond, and he'd be out there in the dark, going out there at 5 in the morning, and whap! That beaver would be slapping the water with his tail and follow you. until you left that area. Geez, he was warning every deer within hearing, and that was a long way on a quiet morning. That something bad is over here. He warned the deer, here comes a hunter. So we had to change the course of that cruise trail as well. I suppose I should tell you about cruise trails. Well, we've talked about it before, but here's some nitty-gritty about cruise trails. This was one of our major ways of finding very fresh tracks of a big buck every day, using a cruise trail. Now, every mile we hunted, square mile we hunted, every square mile buck, dominant buck breeding range we hunt in, they're usually around a square mile, rarely bigger, but sometimes bigger. But anyway, within every one of those, we created a cruise trail. And our cruise trail was kind of a oblong thing within a square mile. It didn't go everywhere, but it went through the middle of the thing. And a special point was made to make sure we would come within 100 yards of every feeding area that we knew of in that square mile. And boy, some of those square miles had as many as 10 feeding areas. Our cruise trails never crossed a feeding area. In fact, when you're hunting, you should never cross a feeding area to get to a stand site. That's a no-no, for all kinds of reasons. Whitetails 400 yards away could be watching that feeding area from a height maybe, or opening somewhere, or listening. And if they detect a hunter going across that feeding area, they're not going to use that feeding area today. They might not use it for 4 days, 5 days because of that. And whether you see it happening or not, that's going to happen. That's almost a rule amongst whitetails. So anyway, but we went close to feeding areas because we wanted to see if deer were using any of those feeding areas right now, today, or not yesterday or a week ago. We want to see very fresh tracks of a big buck, preferably. But sometimes all we had to see is doe urine with blood spots in it. There's a doe and estrus feeding in this feeding area here. Oh man, this is the place to be now during the very next feeding hours. They might be going back to camp for lunch, in the middle of the day, and our first half day in the area, and oh, look at this. So you want to be there because you got to do it quickly because that doe is only going to be in estrus for 24 to 26 hours. So if you wait till a couple of days, I think I should go over there where that doe is in this, you're out of it. You missed the boat. That's one of the nice things about using a backpack stool. You can take real quick advantage of signs like that. Another sign might be, here's tracks of a buck, big tracks, 3-inch quarters, inch-long hoofs, or 4-inch long hoofs. And he's dragging his tracks from tree to track, and you saw it in the last seminar. And he's with a doe and 3-inch tracks, and they're going toward the feeding area, really fresh. Man, he's either there right now, or he's going to be there this evening, or maybe tomorrow morning as well. But after that, it's too late. So, or let's say just the buck alone is dragging his hoof. He's smelling doe and heat pheromone. That's why he's dragging his hoofs. And he's going toward where that doe is, and if he's going toward that feeding area over there, that's where you want to be. Next feeding period, or the one after that. And that's it. That's good as it's going to be. But that's pretty darn good. I mean, that is excellent hunting. That has excellent hunting value. That's one of those places where you just got to hunt, but you got to do it quickly. But that's why we want to be close to feeding areas. And we hunt feeding areas because over the years, no matter what we did, sure, we'd take some by watering spots and somewhere deer across the stream, and taking some really good bucks in November, which, they don't make many ground scrapes in November. It's almost rare because the big bucks are the only big bucks on the range during the time that does are in nest. All the others have been chased off his range. And And he's with does or searching for does the whole 2 weeks that they're on heat. He didn't have much time to mess around with ground scrapes anymore. But when you find one fresh, that's a different story. And so that's another excellent one to take quick advantage of. There again, you know, in fact, if you just wait till tomorrow, it's going to be too late. Those deer aren't going to be in the same area tomorrow. So, but today, they're here right now. In fact, they might be listening to you right at that moment. And if they hear you stop, it's really ominous. What's that thing doing? What's that hunter doing? Or if they hear you stopping and sneaking along, oh, he's hunting. Let's get out of here. Let's stay away from here the rest of the day. Yeah, you don't want that to happen. And like I keep saying, you know, most times you don't know those deer are doing this stuff, but they are. And just the fact that if you find very fresh tracks, like I'm talking about, or dropping, shiny, really shiny. Well, if it's cold, if they're shiny and there's no frost on them, little bits of frozen ice on them, that's really fresh as well. And they're probably really close. If they were walking, they weren't alarmed, so they could be really close right now. Well, worst thing you do then is stop. So usually, you know, when we go to a cruise trail to look for deer, we do it midday when deer are normally bedded. And sure, there's a lot of days, well, some days, when deer are going to be active middle of the day, and that usually is a result of a certain series of weather phenomena that triggers midday feeding. And we listen to weather radio all the time, every morning, every evening. We keep track of weather on the weather radio. And if there's weather forecasted that is almost certain to trigger a midday feeding period, which is usually short, 1 to 2 hours, between 11 and sometimes 10 to 3 in the afternoon, somewhere in there. You don't know which hour. But anyway, we don't scout that day. We hunt the nearest feeding area where we know deer have been active right now. See, that's where we go instead. So we stay out there in the middle of the day, all day even, if that's happening. So we know that, but that's not an everyday thing. So anyway, so when we're out there and we're walking on our cruise trail, and you know, that cruise trail, as long as we're stand hunters, and as long as that we only use that trail and our stand site, you know, we only use a stand site a half day. Well, you go out there once, and back once, and don't go out there the rest of the hunting season. Sometimes we'll use one of those twice. Maybe we'll go back there 5 days later, because it should have been good, we figured, and if we wait 5 days and go back and the weather and the wind direction is proper, then we'll go back there and be successful. And that happened to my son again this last hunting season. Sometimes we'll use a stand site twice, but the point is, we minimize potentially ruinous trail sense by only going there once. Or we only minimize trail sense, but we keep our odds maximum every day we hunt by always hunting at a new stand site. You know, never used before stand sites are the best stand sites for taking the odds of taking a buck at a stand site we've never used before. We just found it now, or a couple hours earlier when we were on the way back to camp. Gee, those deer went in that feeding area. Well, you kept going and you're not sure where you're going to sit there. Maybe you don't have any previously used stand sites in that area in the wind direction. Maybe you have to go there in a direction into an area where you've never sat before in your whole life. Well, that's a plus. And so we go back to camp and we figure out how can we get there without those deer knowing. They got to be downwind or crosswind for sure. And you know the area. You've been scouting this area for a long time. There's a lot of heavy cover over there. That sneak through that on a deer trail. Well, that's the quietest trail you can use at that point. You don't have a prepared deer trail. Use deer trail, or have a prepared trail, but use a deer trail. That's the next best way to get there. It's on a deer trail. So you get out there. Maybe you don't know there's a deer trail you can use till you go there. But so on your way back, you walk straight to the area where you're planning to go, and you say, well, I figured I'm going to be over in this area. You go straight to that area. You don't have to run. Just keep walking steadily, looking straight ahead, because there could be deer all around you here, and they hear you coming, and no matter how quietly you try to do it, no human is good enough to do it with absolute silence, unless it's raining or wind is blowing or there's water rushing by in the stream. Raining or snowing, sleet, some of those things will cover your sounds, but most time you can't move quietly enough to avoid being heard by deer 50 yards away or further, 100 yards on a quiet morning or evening. They're going to hear you. But if they hear just steady footsteps, they're not going to be terrible. They're going to be curious, but they aren't going to be concerned enough to raise their tails and run away. They aren't going to do that. They don't like to do it unless they have to. Just like with the wolves. When the wolves go by, not even looking at them, they don't run away. Our deer have learned you don't have to flee with all possible speed every time you see a wolf, because if a wolf isn't hunting you, you don't have to worry about them. And it makes their life less hectic. Same way with humans. When a human walks by, you veterans hunters, I'll bet you most of you have had this happen. You're heading to camp, or you're going to go to the stand site over there, and you're kind of in a rush to get there. It's getting late, or you're hungry, or you have to use the latrine or something, and you're just marching right along, your rifle under your arm, and just going right out, and then for some reason you stop. Then all of a sudden, kaboom, here comes a deer, jumps out of the brush nearby, you're running away, snorting, and you start thinking, boy, I'm pretty good at this. I can walk in the woods without deer hearing me. I can get that close to them. A lot of guys come to that, especially still hunters, they might see a lot of deer bounding away, tails up, oh geez, I just heard one, there he is, there's a whitetail, and shoot at it. But you're fooling yourself. The only thing that happened there is that you were walking along a trail or a path that the deer expect you to continue walking along. And because of that, he wasn't worried about you. He was laying down, or may have been eating, or he was feeding there close to that spot, and he's just watching you go by. And then you stop, and all of a sudden, uh-oh, the jig is up, and I better get out of here. So that's what happens. Don't let that fool you into thinking you're the greatest sneaker in the woods when hunting whitetails, because what you're really doing when you're doing that is making all kinds of deer abandon the range for a while. 1 to 4 days for does and fawns and yearlings, and maybe the entire hunting season for older bucks. That's pretty common. Thanks again, guys, for watching, and be sure now to get your book. You're going to love this book, but you're going to want this, so be sure and order yours soon, and it's a good time of year to do it. So with that, I want to thank you, and before you leave, be sure to press that red button down there. As many people as I've got watching me nowadays, that's still really important to do that, because that influences Google, YouTube, on whether I'm going to be able to continue doing this or not for a long time to come. So be sure to do that, and poke that thumbs up button as well. That's just as important. So it sounds crazy, but it is. So with that, thanks again. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all you guys watching these last 18 months. This has been really great. I appreciate it. So good luck to you now, and we'll see you again soon. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.